Yeah, now it's recording. Yes, now it's red, it's recording. So what I was just explaining, and just to reiterate, since I didn't hit record with the SD card in, is that this is the very first episode of Dale and I speaking with somebody, and today we're sitting with Ben Cushing, Regional Manager of Four Seasons Sotheby's International Realty, and you have a YouTube discussion format type product that we thought would be really interesting to hear about, especially getting into this as we are new to this endeavor, really just working with what we know and what we have.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I kind of had the same idea that you guys have right now of doing some type of a podcast or YouTube channel. And my oldest son, Tucker, knows how to do this stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't. So he created a YouTube channel for me, and I'm able to send someone a Zoom link mm-hmm. and record our conversation on Zoom that gets uploaded to my YouTube channel.
That's awesome.
And so I've interviewed a handful of people that are in the industry that I know, some fellow realtors from around the state, our state CEO, and things of that nature. And it's been a very simple conversation, just like we're having here.
Sure.
There's no agenda. There's no format. We sit down and talk about what's going on in life and mm-hmm. and real estate and all those types of things. So I think what you guys are doing is great, and people will find it very interesting because the gentleman sitting to your right has some stories.
Yes, just a few.
Yeah, he's a couple days older than I am, not by much, but has some great insight too in the real estate realm. Yes. Since he's been doing this for quite a while, that I think people will find interesting. It's not always about the buying and selling. Right. It's about the stories we have in real estate too.
Well, that's something that coming into today, the only preparation that I really did was I am curious what your favorite real estate or just story in general is right now. And we can get to that later, but I think that that's really the highlight of the episodes is what's your favorite story to tell right now? What's kind of crazy? What's going on in the world that's, a topic that you are discussing and like discussing for various reasons?
Well, I mean, that's a very broad question. Sure. I mean, there's a ton of things that are going on in the world today that are very interesting in our industry. The lack of inventory, interest rates going up, people buying houses for hundreds of $1,000s more than the asking price, waiving inspections and appraisals.
Yep.
Dale and I, that's not from the world Dale and I come from.
Sure.
In real estate. One thing that one quick story that I'll share, and then I'll let you guys chime in. My first real estate transaction ever. Mm-hmm. So the year is 1995-ish, right mm-hmm. around there. We were selling a small little cottage on Lake Sotheby down where I live. Mm-hmm. And it was an elderly lady. It was her second home type thing. And she was selling it furnished, had cottage furniture in it.
Yep.
And the buyers were represented by another brokerage, and the buyer was adamant that they did not want any of the belongings. They wanted it out. Mm-hmm. And this lady lived remotely. She didn't live in our area. So we had to get the items removed from the home. And we had just recently received a fax. You don't even know what a fax machine is, Darren, probably. But
I haven't gotten one, but
right,
I know what it is.
We received a fax one day.
Is that the same as a teletype?
Kind of similar. We received a fax one day from this gentleman that had a service that he cleaned houses out. And he's from Charlestown, New Hampshire. Yep. So I took a chance and called him. He met me at the house. And what he did was he cleaned the stuff out of the house for no fee. Mm-hmm. And he turned around and sold it. Mm-hmm. And that's how he made his money. Perfect. So I meet him at the house. He's like, yep, I can do it. I said, okay, we need it done by this day. Mm-hmm. And I was still working at my other full-time job at the time at the police department in New London. And I got off my midnight shift, and the day he was supposed to have the house clean, I drive over. It was in the middle of the winter, December. Mm-hmm. I drive over. He's taken everything that had value, left all the junk.
Sure.
And I'm sitting there going, oh. Mm. So I called up one of my best friends who was the sergeant on the police department. He was sleeping at home in his house. Dude, get your truck, your trailer, meet me over at White Shutters. We got to empty a house at 3:30 in a freezing rainstorm. We emptied the house, put all the stuff on his truck, trailer, mm-hmm. tarped it. I come back the next morning, vacuum the house out because we had the closing at 9, had the walkthrough. Yep. Closings happens. Everybody's happy. Get back to my office. I have a voicemail from the guy that was cleaning the house out. Said, hey, I came back at 5 a.m. to finish taking the rest of the stuff. Everything's gone. What happened?
Oh, no.
So I didn't trust him, obviously. Sure. And from that point forward, we did a ton of deals together with that guy who helped us out and did a lot of stuff.
Yep.
But it was just my first real estate sale ever. There I am at 3 a.m, emptying a house, sleep for 4 hours, come back, vacuum it out, and then go to the closing. Needless to say, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I've learned some lessons over time, but that's just a fun one.
Yeah, no, that is, and it's highly relatable. I think Dale's been calling me a certain individual that no longer does business in auctions and secondhand items anymore. Maybe my middle name is becoming a likeness like his. But I know you've cleaned some stuff out, haven't you, Dale?
Oh, I've done. Yeah, as you guys talk, it just brings back, these little stories. But I did one many years ago where the buyer had his truck loaded, was ready to move in. We took 2 trucks from this area, actually from Bradford, all the way to St. Johnsbury, pulled up to the house. The seller had not packed one item. The house was chock-a-block full. So we made some phone calls, and 6 or 8 of us got in there with our wives and whomever, and within about 4 or 5, 6 hours, we had that house packed and on trucks and gone. And it was a really frightening experience for me. And it's one that taught me after that to be more careful about making sure that houses were empty and
yes,
and everybody was ready to perform.
Well, and something that we're working on with our business. I'm just going to move this a little closer to you, Dale. Always with our business, because the biggest issue is the final walkthrough where the buyer then determines that things that they said they wanted, they no longer want. And that's a real, gut-wrenching moment for also a seller to be, ready for the transfer to happen maybe in a day, 2 days, and all of a sudden a couch has to find a home, a cabinet full of china has to be disposed of. I do think that real estate in the future will most likely include this kind of layering of businesses. And I was mentioning this to Dale at lunch about how I think the more services we offer, the more valuable we are as realtors. But there are definitely situations where people are taking advantage of our kindness. I mean, we see that regularly where people are just leaving us with more problems than what we would hope for.
Yeah, I think, for Dale and I that have been doing it for a little bit, we've learned over time of what we should and probably shouldn't be doing and what other people should be doing to assist us in our profession. But I think ultimately realtors need to do a better job at their buyer and seller consultations and educating that consumer and client up front of how things work.
Yeah.
And things like when we have a situation where a buyer all of a sudden says, or a seller says, no, I'm leaving that couch, and the buyer doesn't want it. Well, we now know in our next consultation meeting with the next buyer or seller, hey, had this scenario, this can't happen, so we have to explain all that stuff out. I'm not sounding negative, and I'm not talking about our company or our agents. I'm talking about realtors in general because I'm involved a little bit at the national level.
Right.
This is a national concern that too many people get in the business. They just want a quick sale and make some money, and they're not educating that consumer the right way they should. And with that education comes the value that we do provide to our clients and why we're worth what we get paid.
Right.
And I think we as realtors need to do a better job of that. And that's, as you guys know, we were talking about before we hit the button here, that's one of my passions is the education and the training of our agents to become better agents. Because you hear too many of those stories, and we shouldn't be the ones cleaning someone's house out.
No,
we shouldn't be.
My first foray into that was a couple that it was basically their last home sale, and they were going to move south, and they were going to stay south, and that was going to be their later chapter. Well, my wife and I show up with the expectation that we're going to move a couple things, and it turned out that they hadn't even emptied their cabinets. So we spent a whole day hustling and doing trailer loads back and forth, and luckily it all worked out, and the people that bought the home had other complaints outside of the possessions in the property, so we were somewhat superseded by other factors. But that was the kind of the first experience of, okay, we've got to figure out how we solve this problem. And I did the same thing where I called a buddy who I knew to be a little strong, and was like, hey, I need your help moving stuff, please. It's I really like that you branched into agent education, because I think it's something that myself as a newer agent too, I see a lot of instances where I wish that agents had the support system that I have. I have been so incredibly fortunate with Dale, with you, with the company. I mean, there's a lot of people that I would provide testimony towards as far as helping me along in my career. I don't feel like enough agents actually have that support system.
Well, and the three of us have talked about this topic off radio here
Right.
Before. And as you guys know, I teach pre-licensing. So if someone wants to get a real estate license in Vermont or New Hampshire, or any other state for that matter, they have to take a course. And I think in both states, it's a 40-hour course.
Yes, right.
I teach it in New Hampshire. However, what I teach has nothing to do with what you're going to do in day-to-day real estate.
Right.
I help you pass a test. That's really all I do for a fee. And then after that, you're on your own with whoever you go to work for. Some brokerages are much better than others on educating their agents. Some aren't. Some are, you're a number, come on in, and if you sell something, great. If you don't, well, then you might get out of the racket. So I am all about agent education. And, we have some national lawsuits going on right now at the national level. We've been sued.
Realtors, you mean?
Well,
Realtors with
the realtor whole,
right.
NAR, has been sued over. People are thinking we're double dipping and we're making too much money here and there, and they don't know how we get compensated.
Sure.
So that's another part of the piece of education, that we have to educate the consumer how we do get paid and why and what our value is.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that are kind of my mantra things that I'm kicking up on these days. But getting back to your point, there are some brokerages that are really good, and they do have mentors. And Darren, you've been very fortunate to have that man sitting next to you, who I know you look up to like a father figure. I know that. And what's cool about the two of you is there's a huge age gap between the two of you.
I'll be 29 on Friday.
Yeah, and I
We're not
know
talking about my age.
I know how old Dale
Dale will be 67 next February.
I know how old Dale is because Dale's my dad's age,
Sure.
so I know exactly how old he is. But what I find out so cool, what's so cool about your relationship is you both feed off each other in different ways, and excuse me, you don't see that in real estate these days. You just don't.
No.
Too many real estate agents and realtors are too busy doing their other stuff. They're not willing to take somebody under their wing and show them the ropes. I had that opportunity when I was a younger agent. So I think that you're very fortunate, and Dale's fortunate to have you too. It goes both ways.
Works both ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
100%.
I wish there was more of that.
Yeah, I agree. If we could carbon copy Dale and spatter him about our territory, I mean, it would be. I mean, and just somebody who has the same ideals as you, I think, is what would be the best thing to see come out of the industry in the future. And that's what I've been touting too. I mean, I speak to our relationship regularly when I'm working with people, because they also see our names together on signs, and it's become somewhat synonymous. And that is something I'm very proud of you letting me do, because it's not and I know you very well, Dale, it is not everybody that you just let into your business. And you've learned that through many a story that you'll most likely tell in this medium.
But it's a learning curve. Dale's been in multiple businesses over his life with many different people. Some worked out great, some didn't. Same thing happened to me. I had two business partners when I bought my real estate firm in New London, and within a year, the two of them were gone. And it was me standing there with 4 offices, 75 agents, 7 full-time admins. I ran it. And I'm still in the game, and those two have long been out of the game now. But I've thoroughly enjoyed my career in real estate. I had a mentor similar to you having Dale. I had a gentleman by the name of Paul Linehan, who I know Dale has met over time.
Yes.
I know they did. Paul's 86. He and his wife, Ann, live in New London. Paul was the high school principal, and Ann was my 6th grade reading teacher, and they both retired from education in 1986 and bought a real estate company. And that was their second career. So when I got my license, it was a no-brainer who I was going to go work for. They're like a second set of parents to me, and still are to this day. They live in New London. And then I bought the company from them, and then they worked for me. Yep. So it was kind of a unique thing, but I learned a lot. It's been a tough ride over time. I've had to fire people. I've hired people. I've had to fire some friends. I had to close offices when we had the downturn. I've opened offices, but it's been a good learning curve all along. My 2 sons kind of grew up in the business in that they were just the little rugrats running around the office, and some of my staff, and they were babysitters. It was kind of worked out great.
That's awesome.
My oldest son, Tucker, he's now studying to get his license as we speak, because he wants to get involved. The younger one won't. He's going into the military, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But it's been a great run. Real estate has afforded me a great life. Has it had its ups and downs? Sure. These last few years have just been nutty. Just nutty. Dale and I could sit here and tell you bazillions of stories of what's going on right now. This is the Jetson stuff as to what's happening.
We couldn't dream it.
We couldn't.
Right. And that's what we talk about regularly. I think most of what I'm doing by making myself sane through conversations with Dale is also confirming that I'm not out of the realm of reality to be shocked by certain activities and behaviors because we've seen an all-time high for crazy situations.
Ben, you touched on something that reminded me. My mentor was an educator. He was a math teacher at New Hampton School. And he decided that he would open a real estate office, and he opened a real estate office in Route 104 in New Hampton.
Yep.
And he hired me in 1978, I think. And he taught me everything I know in real estate, and especially ethics. That was so important. He was so honest and ethical. And to this day, in 2023, he remains my best friend. And
that's amazing. Because ethics is very important. I mean, there's no question. I teach ethics, right? So it's a very important topic. However, we don't have a lot of ethics going on.
Exactly.
And I don't want this to be negative.
No.
It's just reality.
No, it is. It is.
We don't see a lot of great ethical moves by not just realtors, but buyers and sellers in general, you know, and I think that's our job. That's our responsibility. And it's our responsibility to police each other too, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, it's I've probably made some of my best friends in my life through this business, that they were either clients of mine or something like that, and then we've hit it off. And I mean, I have this one gentleman that was a client, now has turned into a best friend. We call each other every single night of the week at 9:45, because his family's in bed, mine's in bed, then we can talk. And we talk about fishing, basketball. We talk about all that hobby stuff we do.
Sure.
But through real estate has come that relationship.
That's sweet. I'm working on those, especially. I mean, I've identified multiple people that I really like working with, and that I'm starting to also refer business that way because of that relationship that I want to build. Dale has a relationship with a commercial real estate individual, Cam Brown, that I'm somewhat trying to replicate through that because of the fact that we can't do commercial with our specific brokerage, which is totally fine. I mean, I think that Sotheby's has been one of the greatest assets in my career. But working within their standards and parameters is something that I'm thinking about not only on a day-to-day basis, but also looking forward in the future of how can I continue this momentum without losing it all if I'm just being hit with a bunch of commercial projects that I just can't seem to work with. So I think that's something, the relationship element is so important in this business too. I mean,
that's what our business is.
Yeah.
All we are is we're relationship builders.
Yeah. Right.
That's all we are.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
The paperwork and all that stuff, that's secondary. We can make that happen. It's the relationship building, and whether it's a referral that we get from another realtor from somewhere else, excuse me, working with a buyer and or seller, we still have to build that relationship with that person that's now come to us.
Yeah.
And if they like you and things work out, you're going to get business from them down the road. I mean, it's great how it works, as long as you just, you know, you have to be treated the way you want to be treated.
Right. It's so silly because it's the golden rule applies in everything. I mean, it's really, just like with our transactions, with our buyers, with our sellers, we all just want to be treated the same standard that we treat other people that we feel is a heightened standard of treatment. And I think that we've been very lucky to be able to do that in most cases. I know it's been tough these last, I'll say 36 months now, because that's the duration of my career at this point, as of July of 2023. It's also been tough to manage expectations. We are constantly working against everybody around our sellers that's inflating the value. And we're also working against everybody that's around our buyers that's telling them how competitive and how scary it is. So we've been really just working on keeping things at realistic and setting expectations these past 36 months as well. It's been a huge part of my day-to-day.
Well, and that's ultimately what we have to do. We have to set the expectations of our buyer and seller, but they also have to know what we expect of them and what they expect of us, and we have to lay that ground rules right up front.
Yeah.
You know, I had a buyer that I worked with this past weekend who was a referral to me from a friend on the Cape, and she wanted to buy something up in Newbury, New Hampshire, and it was an open house. Had to have been 70 or 80 people at this open house, just crazy. And my buyer won the bid.
Awesome.
But we offered $80,000 more than asking, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But I met this lady at the Park and Ride in New London Saturday morning at 9. The open house started at 10. We sat in my Jeep and had an hour-long consultation on how real estate works.
Yeah.
And at the end of that consultation, she said, "I want you to represent me."
Great.
Okay. And that's how I don't want to make it sound it's that easy.
No,
But because I've done it enough, that's how it was. I can show my value and express to her how I'm going to look out for her best interests going forward. Now, I couldn't promise that we're going to get the winning bid.
of course.
But I gave her some insight. And, you know, the other thing was we have to be able to show our value. And you hit on it, Darren. We have to show our value with all the other contacts that we have. We have vetted people that we've dealt with over the years. We have a list of service providers that we can tell our buyers and sellers to that we know will take care of them the right way.
Or won't. That's the other really valuable thing is knowing who not to call, especially up here because there's not the same amount of businesses as a metropolitan market like Massachusetts, for example, just a neighbor to the south. I mean, you go to any township and there's probably 10 times as many lawn care companies as we have up here in every township in Massachusetts.
I know that Darren is learning this very quickly. We were just talking at lunch. He's developed a relationship with a carpenter contractor builder.
Yes.
They're friends, and he can call him, and the guy drops everything, and in a minute's notice goes out and looks at a job with him.
Somebody else's listing that I
that's
had.
That's a piece of gold.
Yeah. Well, and it's like somebody else's listing that I have under contract with a buyer. We had some subject twos for an appraisal, and the seller's contractor flaked. And so we were kind of held just, okay, what do? We have to call a random number. And I was very fortunate to be able to connect the parties, and my contractor ended up taking care of the work. And I got the call. They started this project at the beginning of the week. I got the call at lunch today that it was done.
So for me, those are the stories that need to be told to your clients or customers. That's where your value comes in.
Yes.
That's how valuable we are, that we could take a situation that could have blown up.
Yeah, it could have been a lost deal.
And within a day, we had it straightened out because of who we know.
Yep.
That's where our value comes in.
We were just actually talking about this with a situation that obviously anything that's transactional, I'll describe in very, very brief detail. We had a situation where something fell apart kind of out of the blue. And I was actually able to simultaneously negotiate a deposit situation with a new contract to put together basically in a 24-hour period. We are back on track with a new buyer.
I saw that.
That situation, not to pat myself on the back, but man, was I playing Battleship for a moment. Everything's moving around and I don't know what's on the other side of the board. It worked out. But that's also very hard to teach. I mean, that's a situation where we also got really lucky in a way.
But that situation, part of that is due to the fact that he was working with a buyer's representative who's part of our firm.
No, previously. Yeah, right. The buyer that's now under contract is with an agent in our firm. Yes.
Yeah, and they have a good relationship. So all those things help.
Yes.
To make it click.
And that's what we as realtors need to keep those stories in our mind to pass on, to show where our value is. And here's what we charge and here's the reason why.
Yeah.
Because I kept that deal alive. I kept that deal alive. And because of my contact here, that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Because we're in a very, very odd profession.
Yes.
In that you go see the doctor, you have to pay the bill. You go see the attorney, they push the start button, you got to pay the bill or a retainer.
Right.
You want to ride around with Ben, Darren, or Dale, we'll drive you around, take you out to lunch, burn up all our gas, and then you tell us 3 months later you just bought something in Maine.
Yep.
And we lost money.
Yeah.
So it's a great profession. I say that in jest, but it is a great profession.
Oh,
I mean, it is. It's a really, really good profession. You know, Darren's done enough of it now, and Dale and I know there's nothing better when you have a buyer or a seller for that matter, and it's a first-time home buyer or whatever, and they get the keys to that house, and you see the expression on their face, no matter how much money we made or didn't make.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, especially if they become friends for a long time or life. Yeah. That's what this business is all about. Yeah. You know,
I'm always fascinated when you go to a cocktail party. You don't say to your doctor at how was your surgery today? Or you don't say to the attorney, how was that client? How are you doing with that client?
Yes.
But everybody comes to us and says, how's the real estate business? How are you doing? What's it like now? You know,
your local source of real estate gossip.
Incredible.
And, you know, for me, living in a small community that I live in New London, of course, I was on the police department there, on the budget committee, on the school board, fire department, coach for 30 years. And had an office right on Main Street, New London.
Yep.
I try to go shopping outside of town.
Yeah.
Because if I go into the local supermarket, Ben, what's going on?
Yeah.
I don't have time to talk to people anymore. You know, I send my kids to the post office, you know, but being funny about it. But that is part of our business.
Right.
Because you never know what a chat's going to lead. We talked about this in our Hanover meeting this morning. One of the agents brought in a new dog that they just got.
Oh, sweet.
A sweet little puppy.
Another dog.
Yeah, another dog to the family. And they were saying that they were walking the dog down the street the other day and might have got a lead from it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, you never know. You just never know.
No.
So we always have to be on. That's part of our business. We always have to be on.
We were just talking about this at lunch, too. It's when Dale and I do the majority of our downloading is over a meal. There are agents that I've been working with that I'm very happy to work with and happy to help. But the question I often get is, you know, what can I do to follow the track that you're on? And honestly, the answer is just work every second of every day. I was just telling Dale this, and it sounds very soulless, but in all reality, the pursuit of the almighty dollar is something that good realtors are thinking about 24/7, in my opinion. And even if it's not, you know, if you don't have to be at a child's basketball game and you're combing through the audience to find who you can do a deal with, but being ready for that instance where somebody comes up and goes, "Hey, how's the market?" You know, like, you know, in the middle of the game, that very easily could turn into a series of deals. And that's where the most value comes out of our conversations, when it's somebody who has multiple equity holdings that you then can help them liquidate and then maybe reinvest. I mean, you've done a lot of that, haven't you, Dale? Buying and selling.
Well, and keeping that positive attitude when those people come at you. I mean, some days you'd like to say, "Oh, business sucks," you know, but you can't do that. It's just, well, things are great. Things are really going well.
Yeah. We have to be proactive, not reactive in our business. We always have to be building our business because none of us know when our next check's coming in.
No.
I mean, we might have some closing lined up. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But we don't know when that's going to happen. Dale and I have been through it enough. The market could just take a nosedive on Friday. We don't know, right? So we have to, you know, you have to keep chugging. You always have to keep it going no matter what it is. You just got to, I mentioned this today in our meeting in Hanover. I said to the agents there, how well do you think your clients, customers, and friends can find you? How are you branding yourself? You know, Google yourself and see what comes up about you. And if you can't find yourself on the first page, you got a problem. You know, if you're online, don't just assume that people know where you are because they don't. Last story I'll tell you, and I know you want to get going. Last story real quick is
we're no rush.
Paul Linehan told this story years and years ago. He sold the house to a gentleman in New London, and 5 years go by. And next thing you know, that house is on the market with a local agent in New London, not Paul. And Paul's all bent out of shape in the office. What's he doing? Dude, I sold him that house. I'm like, when's the last time you talked to him? Well, I sent him a Christmas card a few years ago. That's your problem.
Yeah.
Right? There was, you know, we have the Kearsarge Shopper down my way, which is the local magazine, whatever thing you call that people run ads in and stuff. And we've always said down my way, if people think if you're not in the shopper, you're not in business, because that is the holy grail down there. Every Wednesday they line up at the post office to get that thing, and if they don't see a Ben Cushing ad, well, Ben must not be doing real estate anymore.
Yeah,
true.
And it's expensive for all of us. That's an expensive cost to do that stuff. But
that's the things taught. We don't have to worry about
we
that.
We have to stay first and foremost in everybody's eyes. And I've told this to Darren, and Dale knows this. And for the people that might listen to this someday, we as real estate agents, we can refer business anywhere in the country. So Dale has a cousin in California that's thinking of selling their house. Dale can refer them to an agent out there, and Dale could get paid a little referral fee for doing that. And that's a part of the business I think real estate agents forget about, because it's a huge business. I know of 2 agents in New Hampshire that make 6 figures a year just referring business. That's all they do. So there's many aspects of our business that are very interesting. We're in very interesting times right now. Very low inventory. Just talked about these statistics this morning in the state of New Hampshire and in Vermont. In New Hampshire, there's only 1,411 houses for sale right now. Vermont has like 840. Interest rates are coming down a little tick. They're just under 7% now. But, people still need places to live. The median sales price home in the state of New Hampshire just hit an all-time record. Last month was a record at $465. In June, July, we are at $495. That's the median priced home in the state of New Hampshire. There's been more sales this year in New Hampshire above 800,000 than have been below 320. Which is just mind-boggling. In 2015, we had 14,000 houses for sale in the state of New Hampshire. Today, we have 1,400.
It's incredible.
I'm not sure, even in my time, whatever time I have left in real estate, I don't know if we're going to see it get back to 15,000 houses for sale. We're on this 2,000 to 3,000 houses maybe in the next few years. Right now, the New Hampshire Housing has a stat out that and Vermont, I'm sure, is the same way. We're 23,000 houses short in the state of New Hampshire right now, and they predict by 2040, at the rate we're going to be down 90,000 houses. Now, 2040 is not that far away. No, it's only 17 years. And it's hard. It's hard for us as realtors. We can't force someone to sell their house. And that's what I tell every buyer and every seller I work with. I can't force somebody to sell a house. I can't force anybody to buy a house. You either like it or you don't. And you either sell it or you don't want to.
I just think we're so well positioned, though, here in our area. Someone asked me yesterday, said, do you think the seriousness of the flood damage will affect our business? I said, no, because everybody's jumped in to help everybody. It's a community effort, and people want to be here.
It shows what people are like in the Northeast, especially Vermont and New Hampshire. Both very similar states. Both work very closely together. I know, since I'm the state president in New Hampshire right now, we're writing a check to Vermont to help the Vermont Association. I know the national is. They're almost up to $1 million right now that they've received. But Vermont and New Hampshire are very attractive above and beyond the damage that has recently occurred, and it was catastrophic to a lot of people. But both states are very attractive in many different ways. The seasons that we have, the topography that we offer, the closeness to Boston we offer, And, I'm talking to 2 guys that know this area. People come up here and they think, oh, I'd like some land. I'd like at least an acre. Like an acre. That's not land. That's a postage stamp. But they think it's awesome.
It's an 80th of the land that Dale has.
Right. So I've recently been able to show some houses with some buyers that I'm working with, and it kind of gets my juices flowing again in real estate, getting out of the management side of it and then back into the sales side of it a little bit. I love it. I love being in the game. I really do. I get a kick out of it. I laugh. I'm at this open house I was at. There's 70 or 80 people walking around. I just laughed and just went, what am I doing here? This is insane. But so
I think if I had any mantra at all, it would be, I was with a young lady yesterday just filling in that Darren couldn't be there, and her dad just passed away. And there's a lot of grief there, and I said, look, I'm here to help. And let's get this done. Let's get a septic inspector in. Let's get the well fixed. Let's get the house cleaned out. And she said, you could do this? And I said, yeah, that's what I do. Yeah. That's my job, is helping people. Yeah. Not necessarily selling somebody something. No. It's helping people.
Right.
That's what we do.
And we're storytellers. I mean, that's this whole medium here that we're engaging in, but then also in our day-to-day life. I'd love to just ask you your experience back in the trenches again, but I do think the more service we offer, the more valuable we are. And that service is everything from, lining up those professionals to running a shop vac through a property to get all the dust bunnies because they were left behind after the furnishings. Sure. Those things are very valuable. Being back in the trenches, I mean, what have you observed now that you've spent time obviously owning your own real estate company, being a regional manager for Sotheby's, getting back into like that open house, for example? I mean, is there anything of note that you think somebody might find valuable that's, something you could point out, or something that you've a practice, a standard? Yeah.
So it's interesting. This buyer, before I met her, we chatted on the phone and she wanted to know what we should offer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I said, well, wait a minute. I haven't even met you yet.
And you hadn't seen the property.
I haven't been to the property yet.
Right.
We're not going to start talking about numbers.
Sure.
I said, I got to see it. I got to see how many people are at that open house. I got to line up some of the people that are there and get my thoughts on who's making offers, who's not making offers, that kind of thing. She thought that was great. One of the things that is interesting for me, Darren, relative to what's going on in today's marketplace, as Dale will know, we never had public open houses back in the day. It was a rare thing that we ever did it, at least down in the Lake Sotheby region. It was very rare. Did we have broker open houses? Mm-hmm. Yeah, every Wednesday we had broker open houses and people took a tour around just to see what's on the market.
Sure.
Public? No. It was nosy neighbors who wanted to come over. Mm-hmm. Now, ever since kind of COVID started and came and went through our country, we've now seen the open house to be the thing you do. And it's turned into a competitive thing. Everybody shows up at Saturday from 10 to 12, and there's 80 people in this house all looking at each other going, are they going to buy it? Are we going to buy it? Well, and it becomes competition.
Yeah.
And that's what exactly happened with my lady. She drove up from New York City with her brother, and we left each other, and she's like, I want to make an offer. So I said, okay, let's get on the road. We'll talk about it. And she's like, I want to win. And it was game on.
Yep.
And that's what open houses, at least what I've seen, have created.
That's different than the old days when people would say, I don't want to be in a bidding war. I don't want to do this.
Yeah, right. We still have people that say that. But I would actually say, I think that open house mentality, though, the line could be drawn around Norwich, Thetford, where that no longer is the case anymore.
Yeah.
Because we've had many an open house over these past 24 months specifically, not the first year that I was in it, but the past 2 years that I've been doing this, where we didn't have a soul show up. And it's because various factors, maybe the day wasn't right. But I do think that sellers also have that expectation that an open house will draw this crazy amount of traffic, and we are doing a lot of tamping of that expectation to say, look, it might result in something. We had one really good contract come out of an open house up on Halls Lake Road in Newbury. But other than that one example, I can't think of another contract that we actually obtained from an open house.
The old broker open houses, we knew who would come because we knew who wanted the wine, who wanted the free lunch.
Right.
I can name them right now.
Exactly.
You know what color bottle to open type thing? Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, they fed their families for a week on all the open houses they went to that day.
What are you doing with that charcuterie after this?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. There are segments throughout New Hampshire and Vermont where the open house thing isn't working.
Right.
And it depends. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest with you, because I've never really had to do it, right? So I'm not a huge fan of it. I get it. But I think because of COVID, that kind of perked up open houses a little bit more. Yeah. I mean, I know in the southern part of New Hampshire where it's more populated, that was a common practice. Yeah. Just like lock boxes.
Yeah.
Lock boxes is a common practice in the southern part of New Hampshire. Within 4 years, it had crept up to where my marketplace is, you know. Unassisted showings, all those types of things that have just, the world has changed. I will bet, though, the public open house thing will mellow out, in a lot of segments in our two states, New Hampshire and Vermont, over the next year or so. there will come a time where buyers don't want to get into that competition. I'm working with a young couple right now. They can't compete. If there's going to be 12 offers and 8 of them are all cash, they can't compete with that.
Right.
So they're not even going to them.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Yeah. But there's still plenty of buyers out there. So if you are a seller and you're going to be listening to this and you have a place that you're going to, this is still a excellent time. Prices are still kind of doing that a little bit in some segments, know. So
this will come out next week at the latest too. So I mean,
yeah,
if anything, we're looking backwards at July 19th.
Yeah.
If this is being listened to in the future,
and not much is going to change in a week,
right?
That we know of, unless we're getting more rain.
And honestly, I don't think that it's going to change next year.
No, it's not
with just mainly driving the point home on people want to be here. I've told this story a couple of times off mic, and I went to Hatteras, North Carolina for a wedding, and it was great. It was a beautiful wedding. One of my best friends from college, but the whole town was for sale. And so driving through a town where everything is for sale, including the businesses, not just residential real estate, and then to come home and to be in an environment where everyone wants to be was almost like I had won some little lottery in a way, where I was so fortunate to be back home and to be in a place where we can put on a house that's relatively attractive and we'll get phone calls. That was really eye-opening.
I mean, one of the things I will say that is one of the things I really like about our agents here at Four Seasons Sotheby's is when we take listings, things are done the right way. Sure, there's a hiccup here and there every time, but things are done the right way. Professional photography, videography, the houses are staged in such a way. For Dale and I, when I first got into real estate, we really, the MLS was there, but you didn't get to see photos only but once a month, and you had books on the wall of the listings that we had. And when we took photos of a listing, we took it with a 35 millimeter and then brought it to the flash photo place. And a week later, you got your photos.
Sure.
And today it's instantaneous.
Right.
So for me, as a realtor, not just a Four Seasons agent, there's no excuse for me as a realtor to have relatively very good photos. Most everybody has one of these devices that's in a fifth appendage, right? You can take good photos no matter what type of phone you have.
Yeah.
They don't, and you got to make it look right. I mean, that's what I tell sellers. If I walk into a house that needs some love, like, listen, this place has got to shine.
Yeah.
If you don't want it, we're not going to get the money you want.
Right.
But that's up to us.
Yeah,
we have to educate them.
Yep.
And that's all it is. We educate, we tell stories, and we help people. That's what we do.
No, and I think that's a great jumping off point, because I think that those are some real strong suits of yours. And for anybody listening, I think that, I think this trio in this room especially are working to constantly bring the standard up and hope that rising tide floats all ships. And that's something that I've said to realtors that ask me what I think they should be doing is just do more, be better, just do what you do better, and then find your lane. I mean, if you're going to work, I have a young man that might be doing basketball referrals in the future for real estate. I said, that's great. If you could just have a referral business where these kids need housing around the country, you could just be that realtor. I mean, why not? Creativity is also, I think, one of the most important takeaways, is that getting creative and keeping yourself ahead of the trend is really what is adding to that value. Because
stay proactive.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you again for coming in today, Ben. We'll definitely have you back if you'll have us.
Yeah. Psyched.
Are you available next week?
Sure, whatever you guys want me to do.
We should at least swap guests every now and then, Dale. Yeah, we've got to get Dale on the schedule.
Okay.
Thank you again, Ben.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. This is great.
Thank you for anybody
Great
listening.
job. I wish you guys the best with this.
Thank you.